And we are finally to the hind quarter. This is the piece of meat where you're going to get most of your bigger steaks from. For those of you that like the names we give things, we've got the top and bottom round, sirloin, a couple other big cuts in here that we're going to take out. If you watch some of the professional butchers, they'll take like big chunks through several of the different cuts of meat. We are not going to do that. We're going to disassemble this. I'm going to show you a couple key techniques to be able to take these apart to where all the grain of the meat in each chunk is running in one direction, so that when you cut the steaks off perpendicular to the grain of meat, you're going to get a very, very tender piece of venison that's going to cook up beautifully. So we're going to go ahead and just start by cleaning all the silver skin, the fat, and everything off of both sides of this. And when that part of it's done, we'll start separating out the different cuts on this. One of the things that takes some practice on these to be able to get them cleaned up nicely is taking this silver skin and some of this thinner pieces off of the meat. The more time you take and the more of this you can get off, the better your end result is going to be. Some of these chunks of fat, we can just get those out of the way quickly. As a reminder, we don't want to leave any of this game fat on this thing anywhere. It's not good to cook with. So with the silver skin, some of this stuff, the best thing to do, the reason I like this little knife is because you can get it just underneath that silver skin, right above the meat, and you can just cut that stuff right off without. One of the challenges is that when you're doing this is to not cut a bunch of your meat. Like, we just want to clean this up. So you can see there's a little bit of meat on here, but you want to try to only get that silver skin off and not end up cutting away a bunch of your good meats and cuts. So that once you kind of practice a little bit, you can take big chunks off multiple layers of meat. And again, it's just sliding the knife underneath, lifting it up a little bit, holding it up, and then just slowly working your knife in between the meat and that silver skin. And you're going to get a really nice finished product on that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cleaning up this whole side and the other side. And then you can see how this is separated here. We're going to take this whole thing apart in pieces, except for the shank here. We'll take this big chunk off the outside. We'll take the saw and cut off each end. And then we'll use these shanks for, there's several different recipes that we'll use those for. And I'll post a couple videos on how to cook each one of these, how I cook the steaks. Some of this will go into a little bit of burger or sausage, but we'll go ahead and just start by getting it cleaned up first. Okay, so I've got this side pretty well cleaned up. All the fat and silver skin is coming off this nicely. This was a little 3-point buck. I think he was only about 2 years old by looking at his teeth and how he'd grown. He wasn't a huge buck. The meat, I can tell already by trimming it up, it's going to be super tender. While I'm cleaning this up, one of the things that you really want to focus on too is making sure you're getting all the hair off the meat. As you're kind of taking the outside layer off, it's a good opportunity just to really clean it. Make sure you don't have any pine needles or leaves or hair stuck to anything. When you flip it over, just take a quick look at your board, make sure it's clean. And we're going to flip this over, clean this side off. Okay, got this all cleaned up now. All the hair, all the dirt, all the silver skin, these layers of fat, we're gonna clean off as we take this apart. So game meat is not marbled. All the fat is over the outside or in between the different muscle groups. And this is a really good example of how these things come apart best to give you individual muscle groups. So you can see all the grain on this one piece is running this way. And you can see we're just going to go through and take off this connective tissue and just separate every muscle group in this hind quarter. And then I'm just going to set them in the bowl over here, and then we'll go back and clean each piece up, vacuum seal it, mark it on what it is, and throw that baby in the freezer. So just comes off in chunks like that. This piece I would probably use for stew meat or venison fry bites, something that takes a little bit bigger chunks. But I probably wouldn't throw this in the burger pile because it's just one big chunk. After it's cleaned off, you'll see what it looks like. But we'll just continue on. So whatever piece you can kind of get to next, let's lift that up and then just keep kind of trimming away at that. And then this is basically one big chunk. We're going to come back and we're going to peel this little piece off the outside of the silver skin right through here. Then we'll take that silver skin off. We'll trim this off and we'll end up with just that chunk that's about 2.5 to 3 inches thick. That's about 8 inches long. That if you look at the grain, it runs at a little bit of an angle. So again, when you're cutting these into steaks, you always want to cut perpendicular to the grain of the meat. But for now, we're just going to put that in a bowl and carry on here. Okay, I've got pretty much everything I can do on this side. We're going to flip this over and do the other side, and we're going to come back. This is one big chunk of meat that does have one seam that runs down the middle, but we're going to flip this over, clean the pieces off this side, and that will leave just that one that we can take off in one piece, and then I'll show you how I separate that. And then this, the shank, we'll leave that all in one piece. We'll just take it apart at the joint, and again I'll cut this off on the saw and trim the joint back, and then we'll vacuum seal that and use it for several different types of meals. Okay, we're down to the last couple things we need to do here. So the next thing is we're going to get a sense of where that joint is here, and we're going to take this thing apart right at this joint if we can. Again, this is where a knife with a little bit firmer blade comes in handy. That came out really nice. So just going to cut that off right there with the saw, vacuum seal that piece. We're done. Done with that one. Okay, so this one, there is a couple pieces to this. We're going to take this apart in two pieces, but we're going to take it off the bone in one piece. So we're just going to start here, start cutting around that joint, and you should be able to see that upper leg bone right here, and then we're just going to stay right against that and basically just work our way all the way around until that bone pops out. There we go. Nice clean removal. Okay, so I'm just going to take and clean this up a little bit more. Some of the places we couldn't get to when we cleaned up the outside. Let's get some of the chunks out for now. And then the only thing I'm going to do with this, on this side, I hope you can see this, there's a thinner piece that kind of wraps over this. There's two pieces that go in here, but we're going to leave this piece together. But I'm going to clean some of these smaller pieces off the end. I'm going to peel this one off. This one is pretty challenging. So what I do is try to get the knife laying along that silver skin that this is attached to. And then just keep a little bit of pressure against that underlying silver skin. Basically just shave this off there. That comes all the way down to the end here. Now we've got it down to where it's starting to come apart a little bit easier, but now you can see the reason for taking this apart, because of the amount of silver skin that's still buried in here would make this a little bit tougher cut of meat to try to cook up and enjoy. Like, you might want to have a little bit more tenderness there. And we're just going to follow that all the way around to the other side. Pretty easy. So now I'm just going to go through, clean up what I can get to. Again, there is a piece you can see in here. That piece we're going to leave. But the rest of it we'll clean off completely. Here are the chunks off of the hind quarter that we're going to use for steaks. This is the piece that I just finished cleaning up. I've got this one little bit smaller piece, this piece that looks very similar to the tenderloin that we took out of the inside of the deer and cooked up. We got this big chunk here, and we've got this big chunk here. So basically all I gotta do is make sure to get all the hair out there. I'm gonna take this little piece off here, take that off, and then I'm gonna clean all this up and trim this back a little bit so it's just a nice solid piece where we can cut steaks out that are the not get too many really thin spots. Like this, if you're thick here and then it's really thin out here, when you cook it, that's going to cook way faster. It's going to end up being dry and a little bit tough. So I'm just going to trim this up. Some of this will go in for burger. I just finished cleaning the fat and stuff off, and leave these in bigger chunks. We'll vacuum seal them in the bigger chunks, so we got the option to use just sear the bigger chunks and cut them into pieces afterwards, or if I cut them into steaks and throw them on the grill or in the cast iron pan or whatever. But there's our shank and the other pieces that I need to get cleaned up. But basically the same thing. Just going to take the knife, get it under that silver skin, and just clean all that up. Finish taking those little muscle groups apart, clean it up really nice. Bag it up, and for burger pieces I'll just put it in one big bag. If it's stew or fried pieces, I'll weigh it out and put them in 1 pound packages, about a serving size for my family. So just finishing up with these steaks. Got them all cleaned up, vacuum sealed nicely, preserved the meat, and clearly marked what's inside and for the freezer.